A glimpse into the lives of artists, authors, and influencers, discussing sincere moments, shareable stories, and unfiltered memories. Let's take a snapshot with Lee and Leslie Strobel. I know you screened the movie,
Yes.
The Case for Christ, which portrays your journey of coming to faith in 1981. Did you think that Brian Bird did a really good job in capturing your struggle, being married to Leslie, who was already converted?
Yeah.
Did you think he did a fair job in capturing that realistic experience?
I do. In fact, when I was approached by PureFlix, they said they wanted to do this movie, one of the things I insisted on was that Brian Bird write the script. Because Brian Bird's a longtime friend of mine. And he's written 17 movies, he did TV shows and so forth, so he's quite accomplished. But I knew he would treat our story with respect and honesty and authenticity. So he did. I mean, Leslie and I spent days with him doing a mind dump, telling him all about our life and anecdotes and little quirks that he wanted to work into the script. And he was able to weave together a really good script, taking 2 years of our life, basically, and shrinking it down to a 3-act movie that takes place in just 90 minutes or so. So that's quite an accomplishment on his part. And we think he did a really, really good job of capturing us and reflecting the story well.
So, with that being said, after coming out with the book, why the movie and why now?
Well, you know, a lot of people won't read a book. You know, it's 300 and some odd pages, and some people say that's too much to read. Some people won't go to a church. It's intimidating for a non-believer, for someone like I was as an atheist, very intimidating going to church. But a lot of people go to the movies. And so we thought, you know, if we can reach more people with this message of hope and grace, this message of Jesus, who will go to a movie, then, you know, that'd be another way to harness the media to communicate the gospel to a new generation. You know, for a lot of young people, cinema is their language. You know, that's their culture. They're so immersed in that world. And we thought, you know, what better way to present this evidence than through something that they love to experience.
Now, I have to ask Leslie, your bride, a question. You came to faith before, at least 2 years before Lee, but your journey was different. How was it different?
Well, Lee's very cerebral, and I'm not. I'm all about feelings.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I was confused about where Jesus fit in the whole scheme of things. I was raised not in church, but my mother was a believer, but my father wasn't, so we didn't go to church. But she would sing hymns to me at night. We'd pray when she put me to bed. And so I had some understanding. But I never knew, like I said, where Jesus fit in. And it wasn't until we had moved into a new condominium and a neighbor came down with a plate of cookies and we became friends. She was a strong Christian, and I started feeling free to ask her questions. And she was answering and eventually invited me to church. And it was really, for me, getting the pieces together was fine, but it was the personal relationship with Christ that really made the difference. It was sensing his presence in my life, seeing him working in my life, and then answering prayers.
Can you give me an example of him working in your life?
Sure. One particular time, we were struggling. We're new. He's got a new position at work. We've got some credit card debt. We're kind of struggling financially. And the kids were taking a nap, and I was opening up my Bible just to read, and we turned in Matthew where it just says, don't worry about anything. You know, the birds of the field, the flowers of the fields, birds of the air, all are taken care of. How much more will I take care of you? And it just spoke to me. And at that moment, Lee came home, and I knew that I was in tears. I was very touched by what God was speaking to me. I had to hide the Bible and put it away and just allow the day to go on like that hadn't happened. But immediately after that, things started changing for us financially. There's a lot of other examples I can come up with if I think about it. But
well, especially the time then with your job.
I wanted to give to the church. Lee didn't want me giving any of our money to the church. So I thought, well, if I go and get a job and kind of do it behind the scenes, I can take that money and give it to church. So I did. And God provided that within like a 48-hour period. I just happened to turn the newspaper to, ads, and there's this job you can do from home. I called, they hired me, and I was able to do that. Now, my friend who mentored me, the woman that led me to the Lord, Linda, she's Alfie in the movie, I told her I was all excited I was going to give this money to church. And she said, Leslie, God doesn't need your money. He wants your obedience and submission to your husband. See what Lee says about it. So I begrudgingly asked Lee about it, and he said, you're crazy. You're not giving them any of our money. So I told Linda this. She said, you know what? We just give it to God. If he wants you to give that money to church, it'll work. So we prayed. A couple days later, Lee came back and said, well, I don't get it, but I've decided go ahead if it means that much to you. But then in a fun twist and God's sovereignty and sense of humor, to give a lesson to Lee, this little job that I had called about a week later and said, Leslie, we've had a mistake in our accounting. I'm going, oh dear, here we go. And they said, we owe you. And it was the exact amount of money that I'd given to the church. Wow. And so I was able to come back to Lee and tell him, you're never going to believe this. And I told him, and I don't know what you thought at the time, but God, I think, was just showing, hey, I'm in this. I'm working through this.